Hello everyone, and this is instructional video for your ellipse exercise. Before you start this exercise, you need to get some paper, pencil, probably eraser, and a simple object that includes ellipse, like a cup. You want something without texture, because that's going to make it much easier to draw your exercise. So we are going to talk about how the rounded objects, three-dimensional objects, are changing depending on your point of view, and how we actually dealing with it while we create our drawings. So if you pick up something like this cup, and if you align it with the lines of your lines, you actually cannot see the ellipse. So if the ellipse it's on the line of your eyes, it just changes into one straight line. Further away from the line of sight, you're going to move it, the wider the ellipse it's going to be. So you can see now the top of the cup, it's lower than my eyes. And you can see that I can actually see it, but I can't see it as a circle. I can see it as a very, very thin ellipse. If I'm going to move my cup lower, that ellipse is going to get wider. And it's going to work exactly the same in the opposite direction. So further away from the eyes, higher away I'm going to move it, the wider that ellipse on the bottom of my cup, the one here, it's going to be. So we are going to move now to the exercise on the paper. Okay, we will try to replicate this effect now on the piece of paper. So you need an A4 piece of paper, plain, and a sharp pencil, and you might want to have an eraser. If you want, you can help yourself with the ruler as well. I'm just going to draw freehand. So on the paper, first put a horizontal line in the middle of the paper like this one. That line is going to represent the level of your eyes. So if you would have an ellipse that was totally aligned with the level of your eyes, you wouldn't actually see it as an ellipse, you would just see it as a line. So on that level, you would just see the line like that. Now, further away from that line, you would go either up or down, the wider your ellipses would be. So if your ellipse is just a tiny bit lower than the line of your eyes, the opening of the ellipse is just going to be very, very narrow. So your ellipse looks something like this. If that ellipse would be further away from the line of your eyes, the opening would be a bit wider, like this. I'm just going to draw it very, very quickly here. And you can see that further away I'm moving from the line of my eyes, my ellipse are going to be much, much wider. To the point that if you look at the ellipse of the cup or anything rounded like straight down, you will just see a circle, like with my mug here. Okay, so if I'm going to draw now ellipses on the top, they're going to follow exactly the same rules. So the ellipses that are close to the line of the eyes are going to be small, and then they're going to get much wider, and wider further away they're going to go from the line. Now, there are a few things that to bear in mind when you're drawing the ellipses. Point number one, make sure that the ends of your ellipses are always rounded. So when you've got an ellipse, the ellipse should have a rounded edge. It shouldn't have two lines coming in like a lemon. So that is no-no in your drawing. Number two, when you draw your ellipse and you drop a line in the middle of it, The side that it's further away from your eyes should be a tiny bit wider than the one that it's closer towards your eye. So if I'm drawing an ellipse that it's lower than my eye level, the bottom part of my ellipse it's going to be a slightly wider than the top one because it's closer to my eyes. So you've still got an effect from the perspective. So you can see that this, it's a bit shorter than this here. Okay, so that's the first exercise that you should do. You don't have to spend tons of time on this exercise. You should approximately spend around 10 minutes. You don't necessarily want to get everything perfect. You can be a bit more freestyle like me. Okay, so now it's going to be a time to put that knowledge about ellipses into practice. So take your simple rounded object and you will need a new piece of paper on which you're going to draw that object 3 times in 3 different positions. So I've got a piece of paper here and I've already drawn 1 copy of my cup before I started recording this video, and you can see that I still got some space on my paper to draw 2 other drawings of the same cup, but in the different positions. So set up your object in the way that it's comfortable for you to actually see it, and pick up 1 space on the paper. This is an exercise. You don't have to be perfect. So don't worry about getting your drawing totally 100% accurate, because that would be very, very difficult. Okay, so I've got my paper and I'm seeing this time my cup from the top. So I can simply start drawing with, just move it here so I don't bump into it. So I'm going to start by simply, first of all, putting some guidelines for myself very lightly to sort of like decide how big my cup is going to be and what proportions I'm going to add to it. So I can see it really from the top. So my top ellipse, it's going to be very open. I can check if, by dropping the line in the middle, if my arm that it's closer to me is more open than the other one. I don't see the ellipse in the middle, on the bottom, but I'm going to draw it anyway. I think that it's going to be like that, just to make sure that the shape of my cup is correct. Okay, so that part, I'm not going to see it. I'm going to erase it later on. What else do I see? I can see here that there's a bit more shadow in here. I can't see the handle, so I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to double check if I like my ellipses. Get rid of all of the lines that are unnecessary here. So I'm going to tidy it up first. So I'm going to see that one here at all. And that took me around 1 minute, minute and a half. I'm pretty happy with this result so far. So I can start adding a bit more details. So I can see that there is a bit of thickness to my mark. So I will need to drop another ellipse in the middle here. I'm going to be a bit more careful now, because I want that ellipse to be pretty consistent with the thickness all the way through. Okay, what else I notice here? I can see that there are some areas that are darker of my cup. I'm drawing in front of the window, so my cup, it's a backlit, so I think that area here is going to be a bit darker, and definitely all of the area here is going to be much darker. Okay, so I'm ready now to start shading. I'm going to shade my cup with sort of rounded lines, because I want to emphasize the fact that my cup is rounded. If I would do my shading with the lines that are totally straight, that will create a very flat image. So the lines that are a bit more rounded add to the illusion of 3-dimensional object. And as you can see, I'm actually building up slowly. So I know that this area here will need to eventually go darker, but I don't add the darkest possible shading straight away. I'm sort of building up that shading. I'm trying to have a fun with my drawing here. So you can see I'm going a bit up and down. Further down I also need to shade, but it's a bit lighter than the rest of it. Of course, your cup or your object is going to bleed in a different way, depending where you're going to put it in the relationship to your light source. So just follow what your eyes see. Okay, so I can see that the rim is pretty light. I probably need to get a bit of my eraser because I've managed to get into the light area with my shading. So I'm going to leave it. But I can see that everything inside of my cup is very, very dark. I could do rounded shading there as well. Or I could introduce also a bit of cross-hatching on the top. So I would shade it in one direction and then I will shade it in a different direction to create much darker result. Now, because I'm standing drawing it, it's very uncomfortable. So if you're happy with the shape of whatever you're drawing, don't be afraid to move your paper to the position that is the easiest one to shade for you. So for me, actually shading this cup now upside down, it's going to be much easier. I can do it a bit more quicker. Okay. And I can again start building up my shading. I'm trying to do it pretty quick because I'm happy with my ellipse. So you can see that my initial drawing, the outline, that's where I went much, much slower with my drawing. And with the shading, now that I'm sure about the shape of my object, I can allow myself to go much, much quicker. So I think I still need a bit more shading here. I'm going to give it another layer to properly give it a bit of a darkness. I'm going to go really carefully around because I want to have a nice crisp line. I see that the rim of my cup, it's a bit darker in this side from my angle, and I can see a bit of a darkness of it here. And before I finish, I should also drop a bit of the shadow. So because my object is backlit, the shadow is actually coming in the front. So I'm going to indicate it on the paper as well. That will make this object a bit more three-dimensional looking. Of course, you and me both know that it's flat because it's just a drawing on the paper. But all of the drawings, realistic drawings at least, are aiming for the illusion of three-dimensional space. So here it is. That's my second drawing of the cup. Pretty good, I would say, for, 7 minutes drawing. So for the third one, maybe I'm going to move my cup much higher, or maybe I'm going to put it in a different position, and I'm going to do a drawing here. So that's your task. You shouldn't be spending more than 10 minutes on each of the drawing. Please pick up something simple without a texture. You don't want to make it too hard on yourself, and make sure that you've got 1, 2, 3 drawings on the page for this exercise. Thank you, and I hope that you will have fun with this exercise.